and they mostly talk to the business internal. Sure. All right. Yeah, sure. Thank you. All right. Then what is it? What is it? Oh, then this one. Decision-making acumen. Decision-making acumen now, it's assigned letter Y. So when we talk about decision-making acumen, we are talking about the cognitive processes to decide on actions or between alternatives, and includes analytical, critical, integrated thinking, problem-solving, judgment, and decision-making, as well as professional skepticism. So that is what it refers to. So that is decision-making acumen. And as you can see, it's all about decision-making. So what we will then be thinking about here is firstly, critical thinking. And critical thinking is something that I think from an APC perspective, SAICA has expressed in several cases that candidates don't understand what it's all about. And then here they're also saying that when it comes to critical thinking, we're going to expect you to be at a level 3. You are expected to be critical thinkers. That's the bottom line. Then integrative thinking. So this is not integrated thinking, but integrative what? Thinking. It is all about what? It is all about decision-making approach to complex problems. So how you then break down a problem and then do it and then find solutions to it. And solutions, remember that it is not the solution that we expect. It could be also just alternatives of solution. So that process, and from an exam perspective, it is where now you then find that a company is busy thinking about, say, investing in X. Then you then raise a point to say that we need to consider if there are not any other alternatives to what? To then that other alternative that the business can invest in. Then also it could be that I tell you that we have decided to invest in this business using debt. Yes, you'll analyze debt using your critical thinking to say that debt, we are overly geared and all these things. That integrative thinking could be to say that, is it possible to then do it? Is it possible to then raise debt and equity or equity? So you are then looking towards to find new solutions to the problem that has been given. Then problem solving, it's all about what? It's all about saying that if you then tell me that this is the problem that we are trying to solve, understanding where the problem comes from, understanding whether this is really the problem. So this is very interesting because, and it's going to need some times of a mind shift, because previously it has always been that whatever the examiner say is true. So if the examiner comes and say that this company is struggling with cash flow problem, and as a result, it has started losing employees. And this has further what? This has further undermined its competitiveness in the market. Advise management on how they can solve this problem. So now you will need to stop and say that before I try to solve this, I can talk about the fact that because we've got financial problems, it might not make quite a lot of sense in order to do it, in order to try to counter the offers that they're getting from elsewhere. Then you can come with alternatives to say that we can possibly start engaging them to be long-term shareholders by giving them long-term equity in the company. But now, one of the things that you will now be expected to deal with is to say that, but when they are leaving, are they really leaving because we don't have money? Or there could be other factors that makes these people to be good, but they are still not able to deliver that good to us, if they are really that good. What is it that we are having as the problem? And we could then find by asking such questions is that we actually have a management problem, that we should rather let go of management rather than lose these key employees. Or it could be that they don't even want more money. Is there anything else that we can give them? Maybe they can value working from home. But do you see that the problem was presented as X? But now you bringing your integrative thinking skills, you're able to find what? To find new creative solutions rather than what? Rather than just saying that this can be solved by giving them equity, but you then went as far as getting to the real problem. So this is what we are talking about when we're saying decision-making acumen. That problem solving is not as linear as one will expect, but it will require you to then what? To think differently about the problem presented to you. And I'll want you to be mindful of this when you attempt the question that we have at the back, because they're going to make quite a lot of assertions to you. But some of those assertions, you should not take them as they are. Yes, previously we'll then say, let's take them as they are, but we should not take them as they are. We need to start by saying that, but this is the solution you are presenting to me. But could there be another solution that is more innovative than the one we have? Yes, you are saying this is your problem, but is this really your problem, or there could be something else? So that is what we are talking about. Okay, where does the third business acumen competence fit in your last slide before decision making? And also, so I was saying that from an exam perspective, the number 3, innovation and creativity, is very difficult to find because this is again a limited assessment, because you get to be introduced to a scenario on the day of the assessment, and for you to start coming up with bright ideas about what that company does, it can be a little bit overly demanding. Because one, if I work for a company in a similar industry, then I'll be at an advantage. But you say you work in audit and this company is in insurance and you have never audited an insurance company, then you might not even have an insight in terms of what makes an insurance company tick. So accordingly, what we are then doing is what? Accordingly, what we are then dealing with, it's mostly the one that the scenario can inform. But number 3, it's something that we can talk about in class, but from an exam perspective, not so much, because it's very difficult to demonstrate that. Okay, so now, as I was saying, we have now understood critical thinking, the basis of validating information, integrative thinking, not just take the solution that's before us, but finding other solutions. Then number 3, problem solving, taking or not taking problems as what? Taking problems as given, but rather being open to challenging even what management to be considering as what? As problems. So that kind of thinking. So in other words, when I then say, what will it be? Z3, right? No, Y3, problem solving. So I will be saying that stop before you then just tackle this as is. Stop to question whether this is indeed the reality of the problem we're trying to solve. Because if we don't solve the right problem, we can make less than optimal decision. Then judgment and decision making. So here it is to then start talking about inferences, that if X is true, then Y must be like this. And here it therefore means that if I then tell you that the company targets the young generation, the young generation, we can say that they are more accustomed to what? To using phones, devices, and as a result, if you are to approach them, then it will then do what? It will then be the right way to what? To reach them through mobile. So essentially, it talks to what? It talks about this process of judgment and decision making, and making inferences, understanding the context, understand the relationship between things becomes quite useful. And that is Y4 right there. Then number 5, it's professional skepticism. So it is, yes, I've told you X, but did you just accept X, or you want to challenge X? Because sometimes in decision making, it might feel that we have been clear. When now I tell you that, all right, after we sign, we're gonna increase the rate by 5%. So which rate? Why 5%? How did you get there? So having that questioning mind, it's what will then be expected when you make what decisions. And if you check all of these, they're essentially talking about just having that critical mindset, that everything that you have, take it with a pinch of salt. Everything that we have, take it with a pinch of salt, so that you are able to think about it in a different way. But now the question is, how do I, though? How do I think in this way? When they say that I am a critical thinker and therefore I can make good decisions, how do I think, or what is the process of getting there? There is what they call the Socratic questioning, 6 questioning types. So this then gives us some guidance in terms of how we need to think. And you're going to see this quite a lot. So you're going to see this quite a lot. This concept of what? This concept of clarifying questions. So the concept of these 6 type of questions. So firstly, there are type 1, which are concept clarifying questions. 2, probing the assumptions. 3, probing the rationale, reasons, and evidence. 4, questioning viewpoints and perspective. Then 5, probe implication and consequences. And 6, question the questions about questions. So we're going to go through this, but if you are then saying that I want to be a critical thinker, I want to be at a level where I'm expected to be as a chartered accountant, what does that mean? How does that look like? So with this way of thinking, and this is how I want you to study from nowadays, and because you will be integrating your learning. Number 1, it is to ask clarifying questions around the concepts. So here we are trying to just get what you are talking about or what this is all about. So we get clarity, or we get you to clarify your thinking and understand where is your thinking coming from. Like what informed what you believe about what you believe? That's what this question is asking. So this is where you find that even when you talk to some people, they're very good in terms of this. They are critical thinkers. They've now embraced this way of doing things. So then you might be saying that, no, this person, I tried to talk to them, they're just been difficult. And their response to you is say, why do you say that though? Why do you say this person is being difficult? Oh, when you say they're being difficult, what do you mean? Because they don't want to jump into conclusion, in other words. So even from our learning process, that's how it needs to be. So we need to understand or clarify the thinking, the origin of this. And it was quite an interesting one because quite recently I was talking to our APC candidates and we were looking at provisions, and there was a statement that said the accountant determined the provision by taking determine some provisions by taking some pre-tax cash flows, and discounting them by the work. Then the question was, or the statement was, tell me what's wrong with that statement. That someone took the pre-tax profits and divided or discounted them using the work. Then the candidates, I told them that no, the issue is that we are using the work, and the work is an after-tax rate. So they then paused to say that I hear you. I didn't see that, but I hear you. But why are you saying that? How did you move from this is being discounted using the work to the statement that you now say it is inappropriate because a work is an after-tax rate? What does that mean? Can you clarify that for me? Or are you saying that the cash flows are wrong and so on and so on? So that is what we are talking about. The first question, it's all about that. So now when you are studying, do that to say that I hear you, but where does this come from? How can I get to be at a point where I can simply say the work is an after-tax rate and therefore it's inappropriate? Because if you think about that statement, it requires both your understanding of accounting as well as math for you to raise that review point. What do I mean? It means that firstly, you needed to know that the provision standard IS 37 requires amounts to be present value at the what? At the pre-tax discount rate. So when you say it's inappropriate to use work because it's an after tax, I see that. But that's not enough. You have only dealt with one clarifying point to say, yes, you said it's inappropriate to use that, but how did you know? Before I even challenge you, how did you know work is an after tax? How did you know using an after tax rate is what? It's wrong. Because the standard told me, and here's the evidence. But now the other aspect I need to deal with is how did I know the work is an after tax rate? It is because work is determined using what? Using the after tax cost of debt. And by implication, that means that in itself, it is an after tax rate. But do you see how then I did what? I applied my integrated thinking skills. How so? Because I was able to bring my accounting principles and my math principles, but even more, I was present enough to be able to identify that there was an issue with the discounting. If I was not aware, then someone could have told me and I said, oh, okay, I see that. So that's where now we are saying that's question number one. Question why someone is saying it's inappropriate to do this, and how did they get to even know that this is the truth? Then type two, question styling. You probe the assumptions. You challenge the assumptions. So this is something that is very common nowadays in the ITC, and it's not going away because even in the APC, it's very important. So here, it's where now you've got, say, a DCF. And in the DCF, they then what? Discount future revenue. Then they say revenue is expected to grow by 10%, 15%, 20%, and so on. Then you sit there and you're like, they've not done anything wrong. What is the problem here? Then you find, oh, yes, I see that you calculated the growth correctly. But wait, you are saying you're going to grow this company by 20%. But you are currently operating at 90% capacity. How are you going to get the 20 if you don't have a compensating investment in CapEx? Oh, you are talking about achieving a growth rate of what? A growth rate of a growth rate of what is the word? A growth rate of say 15%, but the inflation it's only 5%. How do you expect to achieve that? But you are in a competitive industry. How do you then expect to achieve all this? So the kind of question is, what else could we assume? You seem to be assuming this. How did you get to the 15%? Please explain why. How can you verify or disprove that particular assumption? What will happen if then you are busy challenging the assumptions? So you need to then always be alert that every view that you are given, you might need to challenge. It could simply be that we expect this thing to grow by 8% in line with inflation. Then you're like, are you saying therefore inflation next year will be about 8%? Currently it's sitting at 4.5%. Do you mean that it will almost double? That for me doesn't make sense. So that's number two. Number three, is to probe rationale, reasons, and evidence. So here we see the evidence, we see the outcome in some cases, but this outcome, can it only be coming from this particular aspect? And this is always a difficult question. This is always a difficult question. I see that you're a CA, but you are broke. So now, what does that mean? So why is that happening? Why is that happening? What do you think is the cause of that? So that is what we are asking ourselves here. That given the rationale, given the evidence, what could then be the basis of it? In other words, it's like it's challenging the causal link. That we not even the causal link, but we just want to understand the causal link to say, what evidence do you have to support this? Before I then accept that this person is struggling, what do you mean? You could be saying that they don't have a fancy car. Oh, but they have a fancy house. Does that mean that they're still struggling? Oh, it's because they are saving a lot. Does it mean that they are still struggling? It could be that they're supporting their family. But do you see now that that conclusion that you have just reached, when I start probing um, the basis of it, I can find that this conclusion no longer holds, because you had just taken your view and then overlaid that view or argument and made a conclusion. Then questioning viewpoints and perspective. So questioning viewpoints and perspective, this is where now we discover alternative viewpoints and perspective and conflicts between contentions. So we are now saying that the questions that we are mindful of is to say that you are reaching particular conclusions because you are looking at an issue in a particular way. What if we change perspective? And in some cases, this is where we talk about comparison. Then I could say that the company didn't do well this year because it only grew by 3%. But now, what if I tell you that the other competitors grew by 1? Oh, then this company did do very well, because it seems that if it's a 3, it took even market share from the others. But notice that the 3% didn't change. What I've just changed is the perspective. And you are now able to say this company did well by just simply changing the perspective. So we are asking about, why is it necessary? What is the difference between this and that? Why is this better than that? So there is some level of comparison. Then number 5, exploring implication and consequences. So this is the causal link. So right now we are saying that if this is true, does that mean Y is also true? How does this get affected by that? What are the implications of this? How could this be used to do that? So why is this important? Why is it the best one? So we want to be able to challenge. And this is really something that is quite common, because you'll then find someone says, and this was the previous case we've got. In this previous case, we had some planes been grounded, and therefore the CEO then said, CFO then said, since the planes are grounded, we don't need to what? We don't need to depreciate them anymore. And even more, we're going to impair these planes to zero. And after doing that, in future, if they are no longer grounded, then we'll reverse that impairment. Then the question was, do you agree with the CFO? The CFO has said a couple of things. One, our planes are grounded due to COVID-19, sure. And then we have decided to impair them to zero, sure, until the end of COVID-19, at which point we'll then reverse the what? We'll then reverse that impairment loss. Sure, I'm following. And as a result, because depreciation is now zero, I don't need to report any depreciation. Done. And now comes critical thinking, is to then explore the implications as well as the consequences. Explore implications and consequences. Now, what does that mean? What is the problem with that statement? Maybe let me just ask you, what is the problem with that particular statement that the CFO has said? The planes have been grounded. As a result, I'm then what? Impairing them to zero. And because they are now at zero, I will now need to do what? I will now need not to recognize any depreciation. And when the planes are no longer grounded at the end of COVID 2019, I'll then be able to do it, to take those planes and continue with my depreciation. So because now there's zero, depreciation has been suspended, and the useful life, I'm gonna keep it as it is, and I'm gonna freeze it as well. So who can tell me what is wrong with the CFO statement right there? How are they then messing that up? What do you think? Just based on what it said. Don't complicate it.
Okay, so Rindani, I'm I'm gonna give it a shot.
Sure.
So based on like claims, okay, so during COVID-19, okay, so we are saying that for a plane, it makes logical sense that you would depreciate the asset over the miles that it travels. So
Mhm.
due to it not flying, you wouldn't necessarily depreciate it because it's been grounded. In
But
terms of
wait,
the
wait.
plane,
On
yeah,
that, I'll be on question number one, right?
okay.
Like, why are you saying um it will be depreciated on the miles?
Uh, uh, because
Yes.
I'm saying that planes, the parts that are used in order for the asset over the useful life of the asset,
Mhm.
we are saying that it takes a certain amount of miles for the plane to actually have to go through repairs and maintenance and all of these things, not necessarily just being grounded. So
Mhm.
I'm basing my logic on depreciating it that way over miles instead of over the years.
But
Hello?
sorry, so sort of got disconnected for a while. Are you back?
Yes, yes, Samia.
Yes. Sorry, I was just saying that when you are talking, where I am is why are you assuming that this is the only way to depreciate these planes? Is it the only way?
No, it's not the only way. I'm basing my, like, this is my assumption of how I would depreciate it.
Yes. So now what I need you to then start thinking about is to then say your first mark will come from clarifying that. To say, how do you even depreciate these plans to begin with?
Okay.
Did you understand? Because then you then say, if you use the, what do you call this? The stage of the, not what is it? The straight line method. If the
Yes.
planes are grounded, you will need to continue depreciating. However, if you use this method, which based on context makes more sense, then you don't even need to worry about depreciating the planes to zero to avoid getting them depreciated. And
Yes.
because they are not flying, then this will be the case. But now, the way that you are thinking about it, it can get you 3 marks before you get to your point.
Okay.
So, because and this is what we are talking about, the process of thinking and unpacking a problem. That let's not see it in one side, but let's explore the different sides of it.
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
So
No,
so
thank you. Yeah.
sure. So in other words, you are essentially saying that, okay, CFO, I hear you that you don't want to depreciate, but before I deal with your problem, can I just clarify these things with you?
Mm.
So so now you are no longer just thinking as an accountant and knowing your IFRS, but you are now bringing this pervasive skill thinking into the mix by asking the clarifying questions first.
Yes. Okay. I see. I see.
Makes sense, eh?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, sure. So now that was one of the issues.
Yeah.
So the problem of the CFO still doesn't want to depreciate, and you've asked the CFO very good questions that could help them to get there.
Yes.
Okay, but now they also said other things. What about those other things?
The testing for impairment.
Yeah. Yes.
So
Mhm.
I would then ask them, okay, to identify like the indicators in terms of IS36. So, like example, a significant decline in the market value of the plane, changes in technology post-COVID, economic conditions, because we all know when COVID-19 hit, the economy took a big hit, poor performance, cash flows. So like because now they weren't flying, so I mean they
Mhm.
weren't able to make income. So those are
Okay.
like the indicators that would maybe imply a recognition of impairment. And
Okay.
then
So let's take it step by step. So step one,
okay,
you are saying that you are in agreement with the view that there is an indicator of impairment because of
yes,
this. All right, I'm
yes,
with you. All right, sure.
yes.
Next one. Mhm.
Then now we would test for the impairment.
Mhm. Remember, you don't have
So
any numbers. You just need to deal with whatever they've
oh,
told you. Yes. Yeah.
okay, so we don't have any numbers.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so that's where I'm at. I'm not sure.
All right. But then do you have any problem with the view that the CFO presented? That
Uh, deep
this,
down, deep down,
yeah,
I do have a problem, but I
deep down.
can't give you I can't give you a reason. That's as far as I've got. But deep down, my answer is no.
What is the deep down problem? That's what we want. So what is problematic with the deep down? What are you worried about from what they've just said? Mhm.
Because it it seems like okay, the CFO wants to use this impairment to show a favorable financial statement right now and worry about the consequences later. Uh, that's what my feeling is. I don't know if I'm on the right track, but yeah.
But impairing now or taking this to zero now, it will mean that, what do you call this? It will mean that they will be hit with a big loss right now.
Yes, so then there's
Mhm.
less to pay.
Oh, okay, but the financial performance of the company is likely to go down. So
Yes.
so so this picture for you, or
Oh.
what is bothering you about it?
uh,
Hmm?
um, I'm not sure. This is as far
Okay,
as I can go.
sure. Let's call a friend.
All
Anyone.
right.
Thank you, though. Thank you so much.
It's a
All right.
pleasure.
Anyone? So we've got the CFO who we are now saying that, yeah, their decision to impair the asset seems to be plausible. There seems to be indicators because we just heard that under COVID, yes, there were this problem, people were not flying, and the planes have been grounded. We see that this could be an indicator of impairment. So we do agree with the CFO regarding that. But what problems do we have from there? Any problem? Mhm. Anyone?
Yeah, for me, I'm looking at the measurements. How was it done? That is zero. For example, I know it should have compared maybe the carrying amount with the value in use or
Mhm.
the like recoverable amount. But now, just saying
Mhm.
it's zero. So the measurements, I'm not satisfied with it.
But your satisfaction, give us more. Because remember, our critical thinking will say, why are you saying that? Remember, that's how it always works. So you always need to be clear enough so that you don't put the opportunity for the examiner to ask you that. Why are you saying that? So I hear you, and I could see the problem, but why are you saying that? Hmm.
Yeah, because I feel like they want to understate their assets. So there's a problem.
Yeah, no. Let's remove feelings. Remember, at this point, we are in an exam. So I don't want to hear. I feel like I want you to tell me the principles that are in IFRIS that will prevent you to do that. Because your CFO, I'm going to assume that they're very difficult. So if you tell them that I feel you are wrong, they'll then say, no, I'm not going to take that. Hmm? Give me more. Give me more. What is the problematic about that? What is problematic about that?
Rindani, can it have something to do with the asset still retaining its value even though due to temporary lockdown? So there's no really impairment because the asset still holds value.
And now this is where business acumen comes in. Where is this value coming from?
So I would say from proper valuation in terms of prehistoric evidence, as well as you can get a valuator to assess the asset to see that is it uh, sorry for testing the impairment, uh, is it fair value less cost to dispose, or is it value with value in use? So that's my thing with like like there's misrepresentation of the financial position because there's inconsistent with the recovery of the asset still retaining its asset value per se. So there's no indicator of an impairment just due to COVID-19 temporary lockdown.
Okay. So that's the line of thinking that was required. To say that I hear you, CFO, because we've already agreed with CFO that there's likely indicators of impairment. But we now needed to then challenge the zero. So yes, the feelings that it's not right, it's the starting point. And because it's the starting point, we then say that even if this plane was to be sold for scrap, it's unlikely that you will get an insignificant amount.
Yes.
And also because COVID, there was a view that it was not going to be a permanent thing. Yes, it was that bad, but because planes generally have a long life, to then simply say that because of this particular event, there's never going to be any value later on, it was a little bit questionable. So do you see that you are challenging the assumption and you are using the standard because the standard says fair value and value in use. So value in use, if you say it's zero, you're saying that this thing will never fly again. There's never going to be any other day. You're not going to generate any cash. It's now zero. So do we really believe that? Then another is to say that even if we try to sell it, yes, is there no any other value that you can recognize, even if this company is liquidated? So that's where now we then were bothered with the CFO for simply taking the value of this aircraft to zero. Then now we then say, but Pervasive Skills has got a third banner. The third banner here is what? The ethical dimension. Because CFO, you are contravening IFRS, because these things you cannot do in IFRS. You cannot simply just impair because you don't want to depreciate. We are now questioning your ethical leadership. So do you see now how we've brought all those things together? So that's what we are then just looking for. And as I'm saying that it's just going to require a little bit of a mind shift to integrate them so that when you are now discussing, you really don't now just look at the technical and say, yeah, but impairing an asset to zero, it makes sense if the value is zero. But the question is it really zero? So that's what critical thinking is all about. Okay, you are saying that you had to do it because you don't want to depreciate, but do you realize that there are other methods of depreciation that you can use? So we are now challenging and probing the implication and consequence, probing the different viewpoints and perspective, the rationale, the reason, and the evidence. That's where we are. Then lastly, it is questioning the question. What was the point of someone asking this question? Why do I think I asked this question to begin with? Is it making sense? If not, why not? Is there something else that I can ask to have clarity? I'm saying to you that the value is zero. So you can ask, okay, what is the fair value? What is the value in use of this particular asset so that you can clearly see that there is a what? There is a misconception that this value is zero. So that is the idea. So that is the idea that will then be expected of you, that the numbers, yes, they will come, but we are now at a point where we want to then probe your thinking. We want to probe your thinking, and your thinking cannot happen in vacuum. It has to happen within the context of what? Of the technical. Right? Then the last one for the evening, relational acumen. So relational acumen. So let me just also stop the recording so that we can have it separately.